It can be hard to spot fake relationships, just like it's hard to tell the difference between a mirage and an oasis in the vast desert of human contact. It takes both instincts and a sharp eye to figure out who really cares about us. In a world full of meetings and mismatches, where people wear masks of friendliness and self-interest with skill, like a skilled gardener who knows the difference between plants that feed and plants that take nutrients from the earth. Sometimes we put too much faith in other people's goodness and goodwill, when what's really going on is that they're just using us. We need to learn to tell the difference between people who are really on our side and people who are just trying to take advantage of our emotions. So, let's talk about some less clear patterns and subtle signs that show what people are really trying to hide behind fake smiles and empty promises. If you're here, it's because you want to improve yourself. In this video, we'll talk about how to figure out these human mysteries and find your way to more genuine and satisfying relationships. Number 15, not keeping your promises. Making and breaking promises is a lot like going to the theater, where words are the actors and deeds are the script that isn't read. These people are great at persuasion, using words to paint vivid pictures of support and commitment. On the other hand, their words often don't mean anything in terms of behavior. They paint pictures of what people should expect, but when it's time to make these goals come true, they fall short, showing that their promises were empty. In these kinds of relationships, there is a pattern. These people often disappear when help is most needed, or when they say they will do something, leaving a void full of sadness and disillusionment. This lack of presence during times of need is not only a breach of trust, but also a clear sign of what they really want. Their claims are tricks meant to get you to give them money, trust, or support, without expecting anything in return. Because of this, breaking agreements becomes a kind of litmus test. It tells the difference between people who see relationships as two-way streets of mutual respect and support, and people who only see them as ways to get what they want. People who are left in the lurch often learn a painful but important lesson. Not all promises are made with honesty and ethics in mind. So not keeping vows is a very important trait to look for in people who might be trying to take advantage of others. People's actions say more about them than their words ever could, showing what they really want to say. By becoming aware of this pattern, one can learn to better handle the complicated world of human relationships, keeping their trust and mental investment safe. Number 14, compliments that make others feel bad or disrespectful. It's easy for people who regularly use others as stepping stones to get what they want to use insults to lower the self-esteem, confidence, and sense of self-worth of the people they approach. These comments, which are sometimes passed off as fun or friendly banter, are really sharp barbs meant to bring people down instead of lifting them up. They might make fun of your wins or goals, or act like they don't care about or understand your struggles and problems. This kind of behavior is like psychological warfare that isn't overt. These people throw off the balance of the relationship by consistently undervaluing your accomplishments and goals. If someone does this on purpose, they want you to keep doubting yourself and having low self-esteem, which makes you easier to control and manipulate. In their eyes, your lower self-worth makes them more important, which reinforces their control in the relationship. Also, people who say such rude things often do it because they are insecure and don't think they are good enough. By putting others down, they try to hide how weak they really are and give the impression that they are better. This behavior is a clear sign that they can't have healthy, helpful, and mutually beneficial interactions. It is very important to see and understand this trend of behavior. It helps you see past the shallow charm that these people often wear and figure out what's really going on in the relationship that is harmful. As a warning, It's best to either talk to the person about their behavior and set clear limits, or to stay away from a toxic situation like that. Number 13. Benefit for one side only. This can show up in different parts of a relationship, like the money, the feelings, or the practicalities. When it comes to money, the user may borrow money or resources with claims of paying them back, or reciprocity that never happen. On an emotional level, they may depend on each other a lot for support, approval, and care, but not give much in return. In real life, if the roles were switched, they might regularly ask for help, time, or favors, but be noticeably missing or too busy when the other person needs help. This unfairness is like a parasitic relationship in nature, where one living thing gets better at the cost of the other. Like a parasite, the user takes food, in this case, emotional, financial, or practical support, from their host without giving back equally or properly to their well-being. This lack of return can drain the giver's emotional, financial, or temporal resources over time, leaving them empty and worn out. People who take advantage of others often do so because they are deeply self-centered and don't care about others. The person looks at relationships through the lens of a transaction, judging exchanges by what they can get out of them instead of what they can give. This way of looking at relationships is fundamentally wrong because it doesn't see the worth in respecting each other, helping each other, and giving and taking. You need to have a sharp eye to see this pattern. Recognizing the ongoing lack of exchange and the feeling of always being let down in the relationship is a big part of it. It asks you to be honest about whether the conversations make you feel respected and valued, or used and unimportant. Number 12. Don't care about your feelings or wants. When someone repeatedly ignores or devalues their emotional landscape, it's like taking care of a garden and letting only one flower bloom while the others are ignored. When this happens, the user's wants and needs come first, while yours are ignored or pushed to the side. When they do or say something, it cuts away at your mental health, making you feel unimportant and unnoticed in the relationship. This lack of care can show up in different ways. They might make it clear by ignoring your emotional needs all the time and not being there for you, or understanding when you are weak or in need. This is clear when they don't care about your thoughts and decisions, and your voice is drowned out by their story. They might not recognize your accomplishments or, even worse, downplay your problems, making fun of the things that are really bothering you. This isn't just careless, it's intentional carelessness, a way to keep the upper hand in the relationship by making your feelings and needs seem less important. The user makes an atmosphere where you feel bad about your own worth, which makes you more easily swayed and controlled by them. This is a subtle way to control someone's emotions that has a big effect. The worst thing about this dynamic is that it hurts people's mental health at their core. It is very important to be heard, understood, and respected. If these needs are ignored over and over, it can make you feel alone and lower your self-esteem, even if you seem to be in a relationship. To get through this, it's important to know how to spot the signs of mental neglect. Being aware of this will help you stay away from relationships that could hurt your mental health. It gives you the strength to look for relationships based on mutual care, respect, and reciprocity. Number 11. Using emotions against people. It usually starts slowly, with the deceiver acting like they care and are paying attention. On the other hand, this mask quickly changes into a way to make their target feel anxious, inadequate, or guilty. They get good at playing on your emotions by praising you to make you feel good when it serves their purpose, and then harshly criticizing or putting down you to make you question yourself and become dependent on them. Think about the difference between a gardener and a fragile plant. A good gardener takes care of plants by giving them the right amount of water and sunshine. The emotional manipulator, on the other hand, is like a careless gardener who switches between giving the plant too much water and letting it dry out. They use extreme emotions to make people feel unstable, which makes the target emotionally dependent on the manipulator and always looking for approval and reinforcement to feel warm again. People who do this often try to get to the core of someone's mental health. It's possible for them to make your successes seem small or your mistakes seem big in order to keep you doubting your own abilities. They might change the facts of the case to make you feel bad about doing normal things, putting the blame on someone else so that you always have to say sorry. The balance of power is always off in relationships, where someone is trying to scare you. The manipulator is in charge and decides when to show love and when to pull away, which keeps the target off balance. It's not about growth or support for each other. It's about meeting the wants of the manipulator at the expense of the other person's emotional health. To spot emotional manipulation, you need to be very aware of these factors. Seeing the patterns of interactions that play with your feelings over and over again is part of it. To figure out how these exchanges affect your emotional health and sense of self, you have to look inside yourself. Number 10. Not enough real help. Picture a tree in a very big forest. In an ideal world, it would be supported by the trees and weeds around it, getting food, shelter, and the company of a healthy environment. Think about a tree that is standing alone in a desert, with no other plants to help or protect it. This is the same as being with someone who doesn't really care about your well-being. You're standing by yourself, with no one to help you. Your branches are reaching out for friendship, but it never comes. When you're in these kinds of relationships, your projects, goals, and problems are met with lack of interest or small acts of support. It's possible for this person to agree with your plans, say good luck, or even say they support you, but their actions or lack of actions speak stronger. When it comes to practical help, useful tips, or even just someone to talk to when things are tough, they are noticeably absent. If they do give help, it's usually only on the surface, more about how they look than what they do, and it usually goes away when it's most needed. They don't really back you because they are only thinking about themselves. They are only interested in your challenges or hobbies, your successes or failures, and how they affect their own goals. They look at relationships through the lens of a transaction, where possible personal gains are used to figure out how much emotional involvement there is. When someone has this attitude, they constantly give, whether it's time, care, or resources, while the other person gets. This makes the giver feel unappreciated and seen. Being aware of this lack of real support is important for figuring out what kind of connection you have with that person. It asks you to be honest about how much you reciprocate in your relationships. Finding this lack of support and doing something about it is important if you want to spend your time and energy on relationships that are nurturing, mutually beneficial, and truly helpful. Number 9. There is always competition. Imagine playing chess where every move is planned, not only to improve your own position, but also to make the other player's situation worse over time. On the same note, someone who only wants to use you will often treat your relationship like a game. Every accomplishment, choice, or even challenge you make is a chance for them to show how much better they are. They act this way to stay ahead in this self-imposed competition, whether it's by making fun of your work successes, going above and beyond your personal ones, or subtly undermining your choices. There are many ways that this constant competition shows up. When you're at work, they might try to steal your ideas or make you look bad in meetings. In personal interactions, they might play down your accomplishments or experiences while putting their own in front of you to make them look more important. You can tell they're always trying to prove they're better, smarter, or more successful, even when they're just chatting. This behavior comes from a deep-seated sense of fear and a skewed sense of self-worth, where someone's worth is based not on their own abilities, but on how much better they are than others. Every exchange is seen as a zero-sum game, where someone has to lose so that they can win. In this case, that someone is you. The need to outdo and overshadow is more important than mutual improvement in this way of thinking. It can be mentally draining to be around someone who's always competing with you. It makes a place where people are always tense and where real cooperation or support is replaced by competition. People don't celebrate your achievements. Instead, they see them as threats to their power. They don't feel sorry for you. Instead, they see your problems as chances to get ahead. It is very important to find and understand this trend. Setting limits and, if possible, changing the connection to a more healthy and cooperative one is helped by it. It means realizing that mutual respect and support, not a never-ending race to be the best, are the building blocks of any healthy partnership. Number 8. Not being there when it matters most. This behavior pattern is like a tree that only gives shade when the sun is shining and disappears when the clouds start to gather. When things are going well, they are together, enjoying the shared light and maybe even getting something good out of the relationship. But when things go wrong, when problems come up, and when you need help the most, they disappear, leaving you to face the storm by yourself. People like this see relationships as a convenience, a way to get something they want, and they judge their participation by how much it helps them. Their support is only on the surface. They only give it when it suits their needs or gives them something to win. It's clear when they're not there, whether it's a personal crisis, a business setback, or emotional turmoil. When real help and understanding are needed the most, they show their true goals and lack of commitment to the relationship in a very clear way. This kind of behavior can have a big effect on the person who is let down. It makes people feel betrayed and disappointed, which hurts the trust and dependability that they thought were important to the relationship. This makes you think about the bond itself and often makes you reevaluate the person's place and importance in your life. To figure out what the relationship is about and what the other person really wants, you need to understand this trend. It means realizing that consistent support through good times and bad is an important part of any meaningful connection. Realizing that someone isn't there for you when you need them most is a good way to tell the difference between people who truly care about your well-being and those who are only in the relationship for their own benefit. Number 7. Not giving back. Think about a seesaw where one side is heavy with work, sacrifices and promises, and the other side is very light and hasn't made any contributions. That's a good picture of a friendship that doesn't work both ways. People who are connected in this way regularly give time, energy and emotion to the relationship in order to keep it alive. On the other hand, the other person's efforts are usually small or non-existent. This difference in effort can show up in different ways. They might always be the one to start talking and making plans, while your answers are lukewarm or not committed. It could be that you always get support and understanding without getting the same amount of help or empathy when you need it. Even when you talk about your weaknesses and personal experiences, you might find that they are guarded and closed off, while you are open and honest. This lack of reciprocity comes from seeing interactions through the lens of oneself. For the user, the relationship is just a comfort, a resource that can be used when needed, but not with the goal of making a deep connection. Their involvement is planned and based on what will help them, not on what the other person wants or needs. This way of doing things goes against what good relationships are all about: giving and taking, sharing experiences, and doing equal amounts of emotional work. To see that there isn't any reciprocity, you have to carefully watch how the connection works. It means checking to see if the work to keep and grow the link is being shared equally, or if one of you is doing too much. It asks for an honest evaluation of whether the relationship feels good or bad, fair or unfair. Number 6. Talk and break of faith. This is like a sword with two edges. On the one hand, talking about other people behind their backs gives people a false sense of trust and friendship. They might seem to be telling you private things, bringing you into a group of people who seem to trust each other. One side of the sword is much more dangerous, though. It's when someone breaks your trust by using private or sensitive information you gave them in confidence to spread rumors about you to other people. This betrayal is more than just a breach of trust. It's also a plan to make you feel less safe and private in the relationship. This behavior shows a deliberate disregard for the privacy of personal information and a clear disregard for the limits of secrecy. The person uses talk to get ahead in social situations and often positions themselves as a source of information. By spreading and changing information, they try to change people's minds, make deals, or even start fights, all for their own gain. People who act in this way see relationships as utilitarian, where they see others as means to an end, and private information as something to be sold. These kinds of acts have many effects on the victim. It makes people feel unsafe and distrustful, which destroys the very basis of a connection that could have been helpful and reliable. Misusing personal information can hurt people's reputations, relationships, and self-esteem, which can have social and mental effects. Figuring out this pattern of behavior is very important for protecting yourself from these types of relationship predators. It means being careful about what people say about others when they're not around, and what information is shared with them. Seeing how well they respect privacy and how often they spread rumors about other people can tell you a lot about their character and goals. To keep your dignity and make sure that your personal boundaries are respected in all situations, you need to be aware of this pattern and do something about it. Number 5. Selective access. You're free, but they're not. In this case, selective availability makes it sound like the connection is one-sided, like a phone line where only one person is always on call. In this situation, you are always willing to listen, give a hand, or offer support. They can easily get to your calendar, your feelings, and your finances because they are open books, while the other person's availability is as rare as a comet in the night sky, rare, unexpected, and always on their own terms. It's not like that at all. This difference in availability isn't just due to busy schedules or competing goals. It's a choice the user made, a strategic stance they took. Not being available helps them in two ways. It keeps them at a remove that works for them, and it puts them in charge. They make you want more by limiting their availability, and you'll usually be grateful for any time or care they do give you. When you try to connect or engage with someone in these kinds of relationships, they often give you reasons, delay you, or just ignore you. People may not answer your texts, calls, or needs may not be recognized. When they do interact, it's usually because it suits their wants or plans. This makes the relationship one way, and you stop being a valued partner and more of a convenience. This pattern can take a big toll on your emotions. It makes you feel bad about yourself because you start to doubt the importance of what you're doing and how important you are to the other person. There is a feeling of frustration and anger underneath because you know that their efforts and availability are not appreciated. It is very important to understand the structure of selective availability. It means taking a step back and judging the relationship's balance of effort and availability in an unbiased way. It wants people to know that good relationships are based on respect, effort, and being there for each other. Number 4. making you feel bad about yourself. Imagine that guilt is like a puppeteer's string, pulling at the good people's consciousness and pushing them in a direction they might not want to go. The person who's using you is very good at playing these strings, using your sense of duty, empathy, or justice against you. They might ask in a way that makes it seem like you don't care or are being selfish if you say no. They might also remind you of favors or events that happened in the past, which could mean that you owe them something and haven't said it yet. This way of making people feel guilty is often sneaky and subtle. At first, they ask for small favors or concessions, but over time, they expect bigger things. Your limits are pushed back, and you lose the power to say no. This makes you feel stuck in a loop of guilt and compliance. The other person's wants and needs come first, while yours are pushed to the side or ignored completely. An important part of human nature is the desire to be seen as good, helpful, and loving. This strategy works because it plays on that desire. The person using it changes these traits into tools of control by making you feel guilty. You do things because you feel like you have to, not because you want to, or because you respect the other person. This makes you feel resentful or tired most of the time. It's important to know when someone is using guilt to control you if you want to keep your emotional health and personal limits. It means being aware of the emotional undercurrents in the people you talk to and being able to tell the difference between real requests for help and attempts to take advantage of your kindness. You also need to be brave enough to question why people are asking you to do something and to stand up for your right to say no without feeling bad about it. To build healthier relationships based on mutual respect, real care, and free choice instead of obligation and guilt, it's important to recognize and deal with this manipulative behavior. Number 3, not being interested in you personally. Think of a talk as a busy two-way street where ideas, memories, and feelings are constantly moving back and forth. This street is full of people who care about and are interested in each other in a good relationship. Once you deal with someone who only wants to use you, this street changes into a one-way road. People talk about their own lives and experiences, and when you try to bring up your own, you often get sidetracked or reach a dead end. There are different ways that this lack of personal desire shows up. When you talk to these kinds of people, conversations often feel like one-way monologues disguised as discussions. They talk excitedly about the little things in their daily lives, their problems and their successes, hoping that you will understand and care. But when the attention turns to you, they lose interest. They might just nod in response, change the subject quickly, or look like they're not interested or are impatient. No matter how big or small your problems and events are, they don't seem to bother them much. This isn't just a case of bad manners or not knowing how to talk to people. It's a deliberate statement of their goals and intentions. By taking over the conversation and not caring about your stories, they create an environment where their needs, views, and life are more important than yours. This is a mild form of egocentrism, in which the other person is the center of attention, and you are just there to listen or give advice. The effects of these kinds of encounters can be very sad. People can feel like they don't matter and get angry when their basic need to be understood and recognized isn't met. It's possible for this imbalance to weaken the connection over time, making you feel more like a part of their life than an equal partner. It's important to realize that they don't care about you personally. Being aware of how your interactions work and how one-sided talks make you feel are important parts of this. It means that the friendship needs to be looked at to see if it is mutually beneficial or harmful. Once you know about this imbalance, you can look for more satisfying relationships where both of your stories and experiences are valued and honored. Number 2, closeness on the surface. It's like the shimmering top of a lake. At first glance, it looks like it has depth and substance, but when you look more closely, you see that it doesn't. In these kinds of situations, people may act like a close friend or a serious partner. They might talk to each other a lot, share laughs, and even have what seem like private chats. That being said, this feeling of closeness never really turns into meaning. This lack of real determination shows up in a number of ways. You may have noticed that they are quick to enjoy the good things about the relationship, but quick to pull away when it means work or sacrifice on their part. When people need help, their support is often weak or non-existent. They might be there for the happy times and parties, but not at all when things are hard or when you feel vulnerable. Also, this kind of closeness isn't always based on trust and dependability, which are important parts of real relationships. People may make plans, but then break them on a whim, and they may make promises, but rarely keep them. They usually join the relationship on their own terms, based on what's best for them and what's easiest for them. People often do this to keep up a network of people they can call on when they need to, without having to put in the emotional work that real relationships take. It's a way to keep people close enough to be useful, but not too close to expect commitment from each other. It's kind of like emotional hedgehogging. You get the benefits of being close without the risk of real attachment or duty. It is important to be able to tell the difference between superficial closeness and real closeness in a friendship. It includes watching how people interact with each other and asking yourself if the closeness you feel is matched by actions that show real commitment and shared vulnerability. It's about figuring out if the emotional investment in the relationship is fair or if it's skewed toward meeting their wants. The relationship has the appearance of closeness, but isn't based on real loyalty or growth for both people. Once you know this pattern, you can look for and build relationships based on honesty, reciprocity, and real emotional depth. Number 1. Not showing respect at all times. This is more than just a bad decision or a slip of the tongue in a hurry now and then. It runs through the connection like a thread that won't come out. It shows up in different ways. It could be through comments that put you down, attitudes that don't care about you, or even just plain not caring about your feelings and limits. This kind of behavior can be quiet, like a bunch of small cuts, or obvious, like a big wound to the pride. Picture a garden where respect is the food that keeps relationships alive. Since it's not there, the land is empty, and nothing good can grow there. Any effort to talk or connect becomes a path full of thorns of disrespect and disregard in this situation. The person who doesn't value you uses it as a way to control or dominate the relationship, whether they are aware of it or not. It's a way to keep an advantage in a situation where equality and respect for each other should be the norm. This constant rudeness tears the relationship apart from the core. Instead of using understanding and empathy to work out differences, they turn into emotional battlefields where no one cares who dies. It's hard, if not impossible, to get back to a state of normalcy and mutual respect when the usual ups and downs of relationships are thrown off. It is very important to understand and recognize this trend of ongoing disrespect. It means looking at more than just one event to see the bigger picture of how people act, to understand that respect isn't just big actions, but also in the little things we do every day, like noticing when someone is doing a good job or an argument. If someone doesn't respect you in a relationship, it's a big sign that they don't see you as an equal partner, but as a way to get something else. This disregard for your feelings and honor shows that the relationship is truly imbalanced and unhealthy. Figuring out this trait is very important for people who care about their self-respect and want to be in relationships based on shared respect and equality. Tell us about your experiences in the comments below, and click here to watch 8 things Stoics say you should not tell people. See you there in a second. Be stoic, stay stoic.